is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Friday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. You know, making it 5 years in business is a feat. 50 years in business is almost unheard of out there, right? And multi-generation companies is what is the actual backbone of trucking. I love everything about what this family has built. And it, you know, selfishly, it's something I'm hoping to do, is build a company that my children and grandchildren can take over one day and keep it in there. I mean, my family's been in the trucking industry for almost 100 years now at this point. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So I'd like to welcome Mr. Russell Leo to the show this morning. Russell, thank you so much for sitting down with me here today.
My pleasure. Great to be here, Chris. Thank you.
So let's start out from the beginning. How did RLS Logistics come about?
Oh, geez. Well, to your point, to the intro, over 50 years ago, the family business originally started. Originally, we were, my family was mushroom growers, right? So we were mushroom farmers here in South Jersey. My grandfather and father started that business in 1968. My father lost his dad a few years after that, and sort of took over as a young age, and ran that for about 20 some years or so, and then really didn't want to be in that business anymore. So sort of took a look at what was out there, and the cold chain had really caught his eye. So we put up our first cold storage warehouse. He put up in 1988. And then got involved in transportation in the early 90s, and then sort of just grew from there.
Was it just kind of like a natural progression to go from, starting out in the farm? Was it just like your family just identified like, hey, this is a sustainable option that could outlast the farm? And I say that from the standpoint of growing up in the Midwest. I know a lot of family farms that kind of cease to exist after a while due to getting property bought up or whatever that looks like, where, farming used to be like, I believe, the number one profession in the United States for a very long time. And now it seemingly has went away. Was that one of those conversations, do you think, at that time?
Not really. I mean, there was a few influential people that my dad would always credit, but the original idea really came from my aunt, my mom's sister. My Aunt Lucy, she had worked at a cold storage warehouse, and they were sort of just talking one night, and my dad was saying, the mushroom business isn't doing well. Blah, blah, blah. We were on 10 acres, even though mushrooms are grown indoors. We were on 10 acres. And she said, Tony, you should take a look at the cold storage warehousing business. It's becoming more and more popular. Like I said, she was working for another company, and so he started looking into it. Now, we were already a little familiar with the cold chain, because on the mushrooms, we would store them, albeit, in very, very small rooms, and ship. So he was a little familiar with how refrigeration worked and whatnot on a very small scale. But she really was, really planted that initial seed. And then, sort of, he talked to a few other people, and then it took off from there. So yeah, so it really just happenstance over a casual conversation one night, I think.
I think people would be surprised on how many businesses are started from just that. And then you hear something and you're like, oh, I never thought of that. Let me go out there and build it. But, to that point though, like when you guys started to where you guys are today, it almost looks nothing like from the beginning. I think the most important step that so many people overlook, Russell, is the fact that just starting is the hardest part. Like, there is no perfect plan, just like there is no perfect environment to operate a business in, right? Like, I'm sure you could go back over the history of your company and probably point at 100 different things that you guys thought, I don't know if we're going to survive this, but you kept showing up, you kept finding a solution, and you kept performing where you kind of sustain the tail of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So myself, my brother took over, when we graduated college, roughly in the mid '90s, and our father, gave us a great foundation We had roughly, 15, 20 employees. Today we probably got over 400 team members now. But we really just grew through trial and error. People ask me how we do, how we did it, or how we do it, because they sort of see RLS in its current form. And I'm like, well, it's simple. I'm like, just make every mistake you can for about 30 years or so, and you figure it out. You get to figure out. Sadly, I lost my brother a little over 5 years ago. But that's still, his legacy, lives on in the company. And then myself, it's still difficult for me to talk about. I apologize. But we still operate the same way. So we're still making mistakes. So no worries there.
Yeah, it's, I think that's the one constant that I think a lot of people think is going to go away at some point, right? Like, people look at RLS Logistics today and they just think that you guys probably started that way. Right. I think it's a common fallacy that I've come across when it, and especially like you see it a lot in social media today, in today's day and age, where it's like they just think success starts because you started your business, and then all of a sudden you got a Lamborghini and millions of dollars in the bank and no worries in the world, and it just couldn't be further from the truth. But for me, it's like that's the exciting part about business is if people probably could tell by now, if you've been listening to me for a while, like I hated school growing up because like I hate being told what to do, right? Like I love going out there and doing it on my own. And that's what I love the most about business is it is a giant blank slate, and it is a giant game of just figure it out, right? Like there is no process or playbook where it's like, hey, follow these 10 steps, you're going to be successful. It is such a risk that is out there, but it's like nothing brings me more peace than this entire environment with all the stress that comes along with it, because I love the going out there and just finding that system, right? Because like I've talked about this often on the show, the hardest part for me about building my company has been systems development, because you have a great idea, but after a lot of execution over a time of 6, 9, 12 months, you might not know if it's actually working, and you might run out of money in that time, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think just, it is maybe as I'm, just getting older, but I think, just going back to, point you had earlier in terms of we play the long game, right? And I think a lot of people now, they want that instant gratification. And, I got twin 16-year-old boys at home, and hopefully, someday they'll be able to take over the business. I try and show them that, hey, they sort of see where we're at now once again, but this is really the long game, and that's what we're playing here, where I think a lot of people, like you had mentioned on social media, they want that gratification, and they want it today. And I'm like, besides hitting the lottery, I don't know how else you do it. There's people obviously that maybe can do it much quicker, and because they're a lot smarter than we are, but it does take a while. And I just don't think if people today want to put that time into it,
What are some of those intangible things though, right? Because I look at it where, yes, systems development is the hardest thing for me, but business is a system, right? Like customer retention doesn't happen by accident. And, it's one of those situations where if I look back over my career, I used to take for granted when somebody was giving us business, right? Whether I was an employee or even early on starting my company, you think that just because they're giving you business today that you're entitled to it tomorrow. And it's like, how do you remove that? How do you remove that mindset where it's like, hey, we got to show up and earn their business every single day, every single transaction, because just like them, there's 1,000 competitors of the services that we provide within 50 miles of our, where we operate out of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's just rooted in the culture, really. And that is difficult. We have some customers we've been doing business with for almost 30 years now, right? I mean, some customers that I initially got out of, when I graduated college in the mid 90s, they're still with us today. And I think that says a lot, both about them and about RLS in terms of that longevity. And I think you just got to show up every day. I don't know if I have any specific examples or ways on how we do it, except that, hey, We just have to execute, and because we realize there is people, especially in the freight brokerage world, right? We tell our people, our customers getting 100 phone calls a day, right? We tell the sales force, you guys are making 100 phone calls a day. Keep in mind, there's other brokers out there as well doing the same thing. So our customers are constantly getting bombarded, and we just need to stay, we have to stay on top of our game, because otherwise you can lose them very easily.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm trying to instill in the culture in my company as we build it up. Because it's like our company motto or slogan is one truck at a time. Like we're going to build this up one truck at a time. Every load that we move from a customer, it's one truck at a time mentality. It's that first load mentality where we got to earn that next opportunity, and everything that comes across our desk is an audition for the next load, in my opinion. And that's just how I look at it, because it's a process. And I don't think it matters when you start your business. Like there's never an ideal or perfect time to go out there, in my opinion. I could be wrong. I'm sure there's some markets where you could look back in history and be like, yeah, that's the best time. Since you started your business at that time, it was better than others. But I look at it, if you're looking to build something to sustain over time and not have that flash in the pan, it's almost more beneficial to start in a down market, because you have to, for at least for me, all right, I'm only going to speak from my experience. It's given me such a deeper appreciation for when somebody does give me business, because we've had to fight for it, right? Like when we started in 2023 with 0 customers, 0 revenue, it was a grind, right? Like, and it still is, but like, I have such a deeper appreciation for what we have now, because we've grown deeper with our customers, right? Like we're not onboarding new business every single week or every single month at this point, but we're growing deeper with our current customers. And to me, that's a really good sign. That means the system works, the communication, the product that we're putting out there is working. And again, to what we were talking about a little bit ago, I think that so many people stop way too early in the process because they're not getting new business every single day. They're not onboarding a bunch of people. They're not making millions of dollars. And what I think, like the data says, I mean, look what's the statistic on all the lottery winners that go broke? Why did they go broke? Because realistically, they didn't have to work for it, right? They don't appreciate it. And that's why I think a lot of people, when you're going out there and you're looking at building a business, and we'll use your guys' family business here as an example. 50, you don't make it 50 years because you don't know what you're doing, right? Like you don't make it 50 years because you had one good month and then you've been coasting for the last 49 years and 11 months, right? Like it's right. a constant showing up, refining, and just growing and having that customer first mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have perseverance, right, in any business, especially, in the freight brokerage game, but like you said, it's really almost in any business, especially starting off, it's a grind, and it still is a grind, right? I mean, we're still grinding every day. And I think one of the things that, we earn the customer's trust, right? Over the years, like I said, we have some of those customers been with us for, 20, 30 years now. And once you earn that trust and you explain to them how things are working, and even in the boom times, right? I mean, we've gone to our customers and we've lowered rates without them asking us, right? Just because we saw the market turning, but, our motto here is, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, right? So I want to make money on that customer this quarter, obviously, but I want to make money off of them 5 years from now, So you really need to earn that trust. And I think once you have that, and you can have those open conversations and just show them that you're showing up every day doing what's best for them, I think that, that says a lot.
How do you compete with the mega conglomerates that are out there? I think that's another thing that a lot of people kind of go up against, where they're like, oh, why do I even try? There's all these big established companies and everything else. How do you take that and go out there and compete in the market?
Yeah, I think to a certain degree, maybe we don't compete with the mega brokers, right? And the mega cold storage companies, because I think they serve a different clientele and a different market. I mean, obviously there's space for them, in the world, but I think riches in the niches, if you will, and that's why our tagline is a cold chain experts. That's what we that's 98% of the freight we move, and 100% of the freight that we store. We just stay within the cold chain, and dry van truckload, we're probably not going to be the best fit, if you will. But if you want good rates, good service within the cold chain, just because of our carrier network, I'll put our services and our prices up against everyone. So I think, obviously, when some of the bids and the RFPs, when we come out, we know some of the mega brokers are quoting on them, and we'll win our small percentage, and we're fine with that. So to a certain degree, I don't, and maybe it's being a little naive, but I don't, we don't really think we're competing, with those top 5 brokers out there, or top, 50 brokers, 100 brokers, whatever the case may be.
No, I get it, right? And I think like everybody can carve out their own market inside of that, where it's like, you don't mistakenly become a multi-billion-dollar business, right? Like, I know a lot of the larger companies, whether on the asset side or the cold storage side or the brokerage side, they get a lot of heat, right? Because for whatever reason, but you don't get that big because you're not good at what you do.
Right.
But I think when you strip it all away, though, and I think right now with where technology is, Russell, and to kind of pivot a little bit, but tie it all together, I almost think that niche-based operations are going to make a resurgence out there in the market, because we're going to be able to do more with less, right? Like, we're going to be able to bring that family mentality out to the masses through automation and technology, and then on top of it, with the amount of data that is available now, I think customers and prospects are going to be able to sniff out the generalists who kind of try and cast too wide of a net, where it's like, we don't do cold chain, right? Like, I'm not out here working it where it's like, hey, we got a cross-dock facility, we can store your product. And I can't sell on that. If I sent them a message and your team sent them a message and we both got on the phone, they're going to be able to tell in about 5 seconds, Chris Jolly does not know cold chain, but RLS Logistics has it dialed in. Do you think that is a potential trend here coming up, where they're going to filter through and they're going to be like, I just want to work with somebody who just moves this style of freight?
Absolutely. I think that's a great point, right? Like, we're the cold chain experts. If somebody calls us for flatbed, or, over dimensional, or whatever the case may be, we're just like, okay, we're completely lost. And I think it's with technology. I mean, obviously, costs of a lot are coming down, and I hate to use the word commoditized, but I think that is happening to a certain degree in terms of lane pricing and just some of the automation that's happening. So that sort of levels the playing field. So how you sort of, how we're trying to distinguish ourselves is, once again, it's just staying within our niche. Because I think a lot, and even on the technology side, I mean, I think, a lot of customers, I want to say they care about it, but they don't care about it, right? I mean, whatever you're doing, that's great. But it's, hey, can you get my freight picked up and delivered on time, claim free, for a good price, right? And if you can do that, if you got AI chatbots calling this carrier, who really cares? We don't have a lot of customers asking us about that. I mean, I realize that lowers your cost per, your cost per transaction, and your cost per load, however you look at it. So I don't want to diminish that is important, right? And to help, staying competitive, but our customers aren't asking us what type of technology we're really doing in terms of paperwork flow and check calls and this and that. Now we got to keep up with it. Like I said, I don't want to disregard that, but at the end of the day, it's picking up on time, claim free, built, at a good rate, and everything's fine. I think a broker, starting out now, and I think it kind of gives the broker industry a little bad rap sometimes, is when most brokers, I don't think, like to say no, right? Which is great, and I can appreciate that, because we handled freight years ago we had no business handling, just because we didn't want to say no. Like I said, it took us 30 50 years to become an overnight success, and we would just say yes to everything until we realized, okay, we just can't execute on every order, on every phone call that comes in. I think some brokers starting today, just kind of tying it all in, the riches and the niches, is I get it that it's not it's difficult to not say no, to when a phone call comes in, especially when you're starting off, because you want that customer, you want that revenue, you want that business. But I think sometimes that gives, like I said, the brokerage industry a bad rap, because then when you fail, it's sort of like, okay, well, you were sort of set up to fail, right off a Jump Street, just because, you couldn't execute on that particular, order lane, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. So much value there. And for the audience who listens to me often, no, I did not pay Russell to say what he just said about the customers don't care about your technology. They just want your trucks to pick up on time. And I talk about that often, man. Is that I think like yes, technology is great. I'd want to automate a large portion of my business, but
Right.
I have yet to have a customer of ours or a prospect of ours ask what our tech stack looks like. Like they don't care. I'm not saying everybody out there doesn't, but like we overcomplicate what we're doing at times for whatever reason. Like your ability to source consistent capacity, claim free at a fair price or minimal claims, because things happen.
Well, right.
But it's like that is what you need to deduce your offering down to as a broker, right? Like these bells and whistles and these hoops, like you're creating more problems for yourself at that time. And I'm like, when we're out there and we're talking to people, I keep it as very basic as possible in my approach of like, this is why I know your freight better than everybody else who's reaching out to you, like with the subject matter expert mentality, because I know at the end of the day, Russell, my entire value proposition is meaningless if I can't have a driver show up, right? So It's like people want to focus in on all these bells and whistles, and they're great, right? But that can't be your value proposition, because again, freight brokerage is as simple as this industry is ever going to be, in my opinion. Product picks up at point A, delivers to point B. Do it on time, and you will be successful in this industry. And I think that technology has created problems that once did not exist in this industry through all of these different tools that are great tools, but they are not a requirement to be successful in this industry. And I look at with a lot of technology, we'll invest it. If one of our customers says, hey, Chris, I need you to do this, this, and this, done. All right, we're going to invest in it. It's going to be if that's what we need to do. Or if our drivers are like, hey, Chris, can you look into this? This makes our life easier. Yes, absolutely. We're going to look into that. But I have actually found from my seat that drivers more than anyone want to talk to an actual person. Like there's almost a resistance that's being built out there from the robo carrier rep dialers that are going on out there. It's causing more problems to the driver community. And I look at it as I know brokers have an opinion on this, but my opinion for my company is brokers are carriers and shippers are my customer. Like, yeah, I pay the carrier 100%. They are my customer because they are a direct reflection of me to my shippers and receivers, just like I, as the broker who's organizing this shipment, is a direct reflection of my customer to their customer. And I want to keep it as simple and streamlined as that as possible.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. I mean, really, at the end of the day, a broker, you're only as good as the carrier you hire, or, the carrier you select at the end of the day. I mean, that's literally, what it comes down to. You select a bad carrier because, once again, they're not used to that particular trailer, that particular commodity, or they're just, they just don't pick up on time, deliver on time, whatever the case may be. That's obviously a direct reflection on the broker. And, and I think, we've grown because, we do have a great carrier network, once again, within the cold chain, and we got great people here. And I want to make sure I make a point of that, over these 50 years, it hasn't just been the Leo family, not even remotely close to that. Right. I think part of the reason for our success is the people that we surround ourselves with, and I try and hire people that are smarter than me in their particular, area or field, and you let them do their thing. But I think at the end of the day, when you have that, that culture, that mindset, that's what breeds success.
How do you take that and attack current problems within the transportation industry right now, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that's getting a lot of headlines out there. How do you bring that down to your team to let them know, like, hey, we've been around for 50 years. There's going to be something. This is how we navigate through it.
Yeah. I mean, what type of problem? Like, just give me kind of like
You
an
know,
example, like in sort of.
if you look at like with non-domiciled CDL drivers, or if you look at the Montgomery case that came
Mhm.
down, that's, and I'm not gonna, we won't talk any further about some of the recent headlines that came out this morning about the fallout from some of those things. But,
Right.
if you
Right.
look at some of that stuff, like, I mean, this is, shout out to the TIA. They're the ones who initially connected us. Like, this is the importance of them now more than ever for our industry. But it's like, how do you work with your team in these times to be like, hey guys, we got to go out there and execute no matter what?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at an executive level, obviously, we're constantly talking about that's being filtered down, with the non-domicile drivers and the ELPs and the Montgomery case and all that sort of stuff. I think it's, you just make sure you have your processes, your SOPs, in place, and you're just executing on what you've always done. And once again, just show up every day. It's a grind, and just perseverance.
So, and as we're kind of wrapping up here, I told you this was going to fly by.
It does. I was a quick half hour. Yeah, I was nervous when he said a half an hour. I'm like, man, I don't know if I can fill a half an hour, but yeah, look down my clock. Yeah, it has been close to it. So yeah.
I wanted to, I did want to bring up the fact that, we are both members of the TIA. They're the ones who connected us here. And if we're tying in a lot of these things that are happening right now on Capitol Hill in DC, why do people need to get involved with the TIA and like with the government out there to protect our industry?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, TIA is the voice of the industry, right? I mean, they do a ton of great things from education and advocacy, on the Hill. I think now probably more than ever, right? Because I mean, freight brokerage has sort of always been obviously a huge industry, but sort of like under the radar, if you will, right? And I think with a lot of the recent, court cases and everything going on, it's definitely front and center. You got the president mentioned, sort of mentioned it on the State of the Union address, right? And I don't think anybody would ever thought that could have happened before, but now more than ever, it's just so important for the advocacy on the Hill, just to get our messages out there, because hey, we do have a seat at the table. And in fact, the TIA, years ago, we really didn't have that seat at the table. It was sort of the large carrier network, right, and the small carrier network. And as the freight brokerage industry has grown, the TIA, we do now have a seat, at the table, especially on the Hill. So I think it's the services they provide are just so invaluable.
Yeah, it's, I look at it now as, being a member for as long as I have, and, I have a very deep relationship with the TIA, but this is like now more than ever. I just look at it. If you're a broker that is out there and you've never had your systems and contracts really checked against some of the current events going on in the industry, this is why their membership is invaluable, right? Like the resources that they have, and like again, like they're front and center on everything that's happening with the Supreme Court, on Capitol Hill, and everything else, and they're working with us as their members to protect our businesses. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that a lot of people are going to be faced with here. If we're looking at the fallout of a lot of this stuff is it's like, if you don't have certain processes or certain contracts in place, I mean, you're literally lighting your business. You're lighting a stick of dynamite and running around hoping the wick doesn't burn out before your business does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I joined the TIA, probably about 20 some years ago, right? We've been in the business over 30 years, and I wish I would have joined much sooner. Truthfully, it's because once I did join and then start going to the conferences, especially when you're first starting out, you're wearing 1,000 hats, right? We were, for sure. It's hard to get away, but you really need to make that time, because I remember the first conference I went to, and sort of, you always feel like you're on this island by yourself.
Yeah.
And with whatever's going on in your business, in your industry, and went to the first conference, and I was like, oh wow, I'm not the only one that's having these problems. Everyone else is having these problems, and I built up a great industry colleagues networking through the TIA that's just so invaluable. I could pick up the phone from time to time and call different CEOs and bounce ideas off of them, and yeah, just all the contracts and everything else. It's been yeah, for us, TIA has been invaluable. On our freight brokerage side, we wouldn't be where we're at if it were not for all the resources that they provide.
No, I couldn't agree more. Russell, thank you so much for your time here this morning. How does anybody reach out to you guys if they want to find out more, if you guys are hiring or anything like that?
Yeah, we're always hiring. I appreciate that. RLSlogistics.com. You go to that website, you probably find everything that you need to know. And we're on, LinkedIn and Instagram and everything else. So just check that out. Yeah. See if we can do anything for you.
Perfect. Russell, thank you so much for your time. If you guys can't find Russell or RLS Logistics out there, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in contact with them. But that's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank that show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Ayy, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the back. Ayy, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast.